Hi, it's John. Welcome to my channel EV Intuition, where I'm helping you understand about electric vehicles. Well, winter weather has arrived here in North America and in upstate New York. And one of the common knocks on electric vehicles is they don't work very well in cold weather. So today what I want to tell you is the truth about EVs in cold weather and winter driving and what you should know about them. So let's get started. Before I begin today, I wanted to remind you that if you like the content of my channel, please subscribe or give me a like. Send me any comments you have also. Today we're talking about EVs in cold weather or winter driving. I want to let you know the truth about those. So what should you know about that? Well, first of all, the key thing that you got to know is that the efficiency of electric vehicles decreases as the temperature gets closer to freezing point or below. That's just a property of the batteries. The second thing associated with that is that an EV doesn't get any heat from the engine. It has no engine. The motors don't produce too much heat, so it's got to use some of the electricity, more of electricity than standard vehicles, to heat the cabin of the vehicle. So what does that mean? What does that efficiency decrease mean? Well, it means less range. So if you have a vehicle that would normally go 300 miles without a charge, well, you're going to be charging it a lot sooner. The other thing is, if you're going on a trip, just keep in mind that you might have to charge more often than taking that similar trip in the summertime. That's the key things. And the amount of efficiency that it decreased depends on the electric vehicle. So that's an important thing. All EVs are not the same. They may have a different battery, and the chemistry of that battery may work different in cold temperatures. So there are slight differences there. But a bigger thing that you'll find in EVs is how well they handle the thermal management of that vehicle in order to move heat to the battery, because the battery needs to be warm in order to function and drive those motors in that vehicles. Those are key things. So you got to distinguish vehicles by those couple things. Let me show you some data, real data from my vehicle in regards to cold temperatures and EVs. First of all, let me start out by showing you a chart by a website, Recurrent, did some testing on electric vehicles, and they came up with a chart that shows how the efficiency of an electric vehicle changes for different vehicles on cold weather compared to, they say, 72 degrees, which is perfect weather. If you look at the chart, you can look at some of the vehicles that they've collected data on and the percentage of range that's lost in comparing those two different temperatures. And notice they also put this red symbol next to it, which indicates vehicles that have a heat pump. Now, a heat pump is a device in vehicles that helps manage the movement of thermal energy to the appropriate places in an efficient manner. And you'll notice that the vehicles that have a heat pump do better. So that's one of the things to look for if you're going to be driving an electric vehicle in cold weather, whether it has a heat pump or not. Look at that data and you can see the stark differences with vehicles with a heat pump and those without. Now, I've owned a couple vehicles, the Tesla Model Y, which I currently have, and the Ford Mach-E. The Tesla Model Y has a heat pump, the Ford Mach-E does not. And notice the difference, and I did see that difference between the two. Clearly, the Model Y Tesla performs much better than the Ford Mach-E in wintertime as far as efficiency goes. Another thing that I get asked sometimes is, well, how cold does the temperature have to be in order for it to start losing some efficiency? So I took some data. I have this program that I subscribe to, Teslafi, Teslafi, and it collects data from my Tesla as I drive it. One of the things I did is I created a chart that shows the temperature efficiency of my Model Y. And you can see that on the screen right now. If you look at it and look at the curve at the top, I sort of drew in a green box that really shows you the sweet spot in electric vehicles as far as temperature. And really it goes from about 45 degrees Fahrenheit to about 85. That's kind of the best area of driving an EV. And you can see, obviously, it's not a perfectly flat curve. It's probably a little more efficient in the middle there, but I drew that as you'll start noticing a more efficiency loss below that 45 degrees and above 85 degrees. But today we're talking about cold weather, so clearly as you start getting below 45 degrees, you're going to notice some loss of efficiency. That's important to point out. Depending where you live in the country, maybe this is not a big deal. You have cold weather, but it may stay in the 40s most of the time, so you might not get impacted too much by that. Another thing that I wanted to show you is a chart of a trip that I took to the same location in New York State. I went across the state for several hours, did the trip in July, and then I did the trip again most recently here in December. And I wanted to show you the differences in efficiency between those same two trips. The July trip was done in a temperature range between 70 and 75 degrees. The efficiency I got was 4.1 miles per kilowatt hour, whereas in December it was between 25 and 30 degrees and only got 3.3. What's that difference? It's an 18.5% decrease in efficiency between those two dates. That's something to keep in mind. Another chart that I think is very useful is I did a month-by-month comparison of the efficiency of my Tesla Model Y over this past year through December. Now, December is not over yet. You can see by looking at this chart how the efficiency decreases from its peak. Now, I defined the peak as the month that had the highest efficiency for that month. And that month was June, which probably makes sense because the average temperature at that time was 71. Now you got to keep in mind looking at this month by month chart is that in some months I did more road trips, which decrease efficiency versus just driving around town. So I was driving at higher speeds than other month. I didn't put the average speed here, which would probably also give you more of a picture into it. But if you look at the miles, the months that I did a lot of mileage, I went on more road trips, so that was more highway driving versus the ones that go without. And you can just see how the efficiency of the vehicle varies month to month. And for the most part, you can see, in the warmer summer months here in upstate New York, the efficiency is within a range of 10%. And a lot of that variation becomes because of road trips versus local driving. And you can see the winter months, that's where I had the poorest efficiency. That's something to keep in mind, and it's showing you, hopefully give you some more information on how cold weather affects EVs. The last thing that I want to point out in regards to EVs in cold weather is that charging can also be an issue. So one of the key things around EVs is that prior to charging, in order to get the optimal charging speed, you'd want to make sure that your battery is preconditioned. In other words, heated or cooled to the right temperature. Of course, in the winter, we're talking about heating that battery to the right temperature so that when you plug the charger in, it's going to deliver the maximum amount of power to your battery. And so there's the key thing that you got to look to for electric vehicles, and that is, do they have preconditioning, and what type of preconditioning do they incorporate in their vehicle? And pretty much all vehicles have some form of preconditioning. The key is whether it's manual or automatic. The Tesla Model Y, if you're navigating along a trip and it's going to take you to a charger, it's going to already schedule when to start preconditioning. So you don't even have to worry about that. And Tesla recommends that you just put your destination into the navigation system and let it determine when to start preconditioning. So that's a good thing. But that's one thing that you want to make sure you're aware of in the electric vehicle you have. How is preconditioning done? The last thing that people bring up in regards to EVs and cold weather is really winter driving. How does it handle in cold weather or in the snow? And the key thing you got to remember about EVs is they're heavier vehicles due to the weight of the battery. and that gives you better traction for that vehicle, better handling in winter condition in snow. And they also have all-wheel drive versions, just like standard vehicles. The bottom line is, for handling, EVs do as good a job or better in handling the snow. The other thing people talk about was accidents. Well, majority of accidents tend to happen in winter driving here in upstate New York. The key thing you got to know about EVs is that they tend to be safer vehicles. Many of them, both my Ford Mach-E and my Tesla Model Y, were 5-star rated as far as the government safety measures go. And the other thing is the IIHS, which is the insurance group that reports on insurance claims, indicates that there's less personal injuries associated with EV accidents. In other words, those cars keep people protected, which is a good thing. Accidents are always something you got to worry about and hope you never get into one, but an EV is a safe car in general. The last thing, this was brought up one time where there was a big snowstorm pileup on the East Coast during the winter, maybe a winter or two ago, and people made the claim, why, I'm glad I didn't have an EV in that storm, because people were stranded there over a day on that highway. And people said, boy, that EVs would be awful there. Well, some people have done tests now since that time, and the bottom line is that turned out to be a myth. Car and Driver did a comparison between a gas vehicle fully filled up with its gas tank and an EV filled up with full charge, and they just idled the car for a period of time and found out that they both lasted about 2 days on both the gas and the electric car. They both lasted close to 2 days. Maybe the gas vehicle did a little over 2 days of idling and the EV just a little under. But the bottom line is, don't worry about that scenario if you get stranded with an EV as compared to the gas vehicle. I hope you don't get stranded. It's always good to have gas in your tank or charge in your battery when you're going out on a trip in a storm, to make sure that if you do get stuck, that you have electricity to keep your cabin warm until you can keep going or get rescued if you get stranded for some reason. So the bottom line is, I hope you've learned a little more about how EVs in cold weather and winter conditions understand the key things about them. Yes, EVs do have a performance degradation as far as efficiency and maybe concerns about charging efficiency when the weather is cold. But the bottom line is not that big of a problem if you manage it well. I've owned an EV and I'm on my 3rd, 4th winter here, and I've never had a problem in winter. So don't let that stop you from exploring and looking into electric vehicles. I think the other benefits of an electric vehicle far outweigh the slight deficiencies EVs have in cold weather. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.